Just how sweet? Well, I don't know. You just might have to taste for yourself, and you might not want to do that. Why? Well, let's see. We'll dive into this one and find out. Starting with the IMDb plot, Bobby Sweet is a country music legend and has been the world renowned face of sweetmeats since establishing his first restaurant with his wife. Sometimes a secret ingredient should stay that way. Yeah, like I said, you may not want to find out. Um, all right, so you may or may not have heard much about this title. This one, I believe, is still in the making and putting the final touches on. I was sent a screener. Obviously, that's how I got to say it. If it's still working on, I will try to keep this spoiler free. Not really sure there's too much to spoil. I think you guys kind of get where this is going pretty quickly. But I'll still try to keep it as brief as possible. This is a title that I've been sent several press releases for via Promote Horror, and they've kind of been keeping me in the loop of what's going on here. So I was happy to be able to see the film. As I mentioned in another review recently, sometimes I don't get to see the final product, but put on a lot of press releases for these kind of indie horrors and so forth. So I'm always happy when I get to see the final product here. So this was maybe not the final cut of the film, but maybe a rough draft, but not a rough draft, but a rough cut of it. But still, get the overall picture of what's going to be and what will be eventually shown. With that, I will say, this, since this is indie horror or whatever, so forth, it will entertain to probably a certain audience more than others. It is, I'd say when they sent it to me, obviously having already done a press release or two for it, I kind of had some idea what was going on here. But they also kind of attached it being a musical as well. And I'll be honest with you guys, and if you guys have been following, you know that musicals aren't my thing. So I did hesitate. I'm just like, do I really want to dive down the musical route here? Not, there are not a ton of horror musicals out there, but I can't say that I'm a real fan of horror musicals or musicals in general. So I was kind of like, really worried about this aspect of the film going into it. And I'll say it didn't end up being too bad, that aspect of the film, and I'll tell you why here in a minute as I get into it. But it is comedy, it is horror. They list here also as dark comedy, and I would say probably so. I don't think it's anything that's going to make you maybe fall out of your seat and go crazy laughing. But I think a lot of the film is kind of driven by, these kind of interesting characters that are, not the brightest bulbs up there. And, but they're just, they are who they are, but and kind of skate by that. Some might be a little bit smarter than others, but, all together, they will figure it out one way or the other. And I think that's kind of what guides this film. So, that's kind of what you'll be looking for here. So what is happening? The film really kind of opens up, gets me really excited because we have a scene here where somebody gets kind of gutted and you kind of know where this is going. There's a big guy there with a mask on, and he's got somebody tied up. He's going to gut them, so we get, blood and guts to kind of start off the film. So, that's going to make me all happy. Interesting enough, he gets called upstairs, and he's just trousing through the house in his kind of white plastic outfit here with the mask on, all covered in blood, up to a little girl's room, and proceeds to take off his mask and sit down on the bed and start talking to her like it's all good. So we're already off to a fun start and different start here in the film. And the little girl wants to go to sleep, so he's going to tell the little girl a story, and it is the story of Bobby Sweet, so which I believe was her grandfather. So, and that's basically the story of their business, and kind of explains what this guy was doing downstairs in the basement prior to going up there. Um, you know, Not gonna, to go through the whole thing, but yeah, the most of the film then from this point on is the story of Bobby Sweet and how this restaurant came to be. Obviously, they have a secret ingredient. Obviously, you guys, without me saying, probably know what it is by now. Um, but there's a whole story of how it came to be, and it's not his store to begin with. He just kind of works there with a woman, works there with another guy, and of course a boss, and maybe another person or two. I don't remember. But they're gonna, it's a struggling restaurant. Not huge, not a lot of people in there. Again, not everybody here are the smartest people in the room. But you're going to see different relationships between the characters. The owner kind of has this thought that maybe one day Bobby would kind of be the one to kind of take over the store and be the lead. But he as I said there in the plot, he wants to be a singer, and that's what he really wants to do. But you'll find out that he's not the best at performing on stage. Well, while he might be able to sing a little bit, depending on your taste, he's not very good on stage. So that doesn't go over well, so that makes it very hard for him to pursue his career. Therefore, maybe this restaurant will hold the key. And he's going to get maybe a little encouragement from someone else in this restaurant to kind of give him the push, and maybe they push each other, and eventually stumble upon it, figure it out in a weird way, what is going to eventually work for this restaurant and eventually turn it into a big hit. And that's kind of the brief of what's going to happen here. So like I said, it is going to be a lot about that, a lot about, these characters kind of, getting an introduction to them and kind of seeing, how they are, how awkward they are, just, some of their awkwardness is just not being, that smart or, like they have their thing and that's what it is. There's some small humor parts involved in the middle of it all, as it builds along. Knowing what the secret ingredient is and that kind of thing, and of course the opening of the film, of course it kind of had me, on the edge there, waiting for more of that and more of that to come, and it kind of takes a while. They go through a little bit of stuff before they even, kind of get back to that, because that is the secret that's to come later. But once that kind of hits, even then, I still wanted maybe a little bit more of that. You guys know me; I'm in the blood and guts, so I'm always looking forward to that. So maybe there is a sequence. They kind of go through that a little bit more. They give you some of that for those like me who are waiting for that. So you'll get it mixed in, but maybe not as much as I wanted. It is it tends to be more about the story than the blood and guts. Or I could have done it the other way around, but that's fine. It is okay. I think there's enough going on there that's still gonna gather your attention, just because of the characters, and you have to pay attention to where they're going, where their thoughts are, because again, not so sharp. But like I said, you'll find out how they kind of stumble their way along. As far as the musical part, as I mentioned, it doesn't end up being that bad, because it's not a thing where, I was kind of thinking, as it started, before actually the first song kind of kicked off, I'm like, at first I was hoping, maybe this was not such a big deal, because it seemed to go a little bit before there actually was a song. But it doesn't end up being one of those cases where, kind of the movie goes along, and all of a sudden they just, people break out in song, and then, it stops, and then it goes, and then another breakout in song kind of goes. This one actually kind of stops, goes to I believe it was the basement or a certain room in the restaurant, And Bobby there then performs, and he just magically has a couple of band members behind him, and he basically performs a song, and you get kind of like a short version of it, and and it's kind of almost cut like a small video, and it will even down in the corner section will say what the title of the song is and something else about it down in the corner. So it is almost like sticking a small music video in the movie as it's going along. Obviously having to do something with just something that just happened in the movie or something that's coming. So it is a little bit different, and for me it actually worked. I actually preferred that over if they would all just have broken out in song in certain places. And I certainly don't think that really would have worked here with the way it went. So the way that it kind of rolled out and they did this kind of short video thing, I think that worked out much better. At least I enjoyed it much better than if it tended towards the typical musical thing. Obviously, it's not all about the singing. I would say, catch the words, catch what they're talking about. It will be, a little bit humorous to the story, and I think that's what you would expect. And definitely the choice of song. Sometimes the title is funny. Sometimes the way it ends. There's one song in particular that ends in a funny way just because of what is going to happen to one of the band members. So it's not, really for you to kind of sing along. I mean, maybe you like the song, maybe there's a song you want to repeat and sing, but just more of the humor to kind of go along with it in that part of the movie. So yeah, I think that, that is one thing that kind of makes this maybe a little bit different, maybe stand out, because I think the overall story here and what is happening here, we've kind of seen in different versions before. This is not, a first time kind of story being done. But I think, this, and again, this is also set, I think in the late 70s, early 80s, sometime like that. It's not present day either. So we get that. So we're going back a little bit. So you're having a combination of that, and then you're having a combination of that along with the musicals then being thrown in, makes it a little bit different. So while the what's happening in this restaurant, what would you guys figure out? It's gonna, I haven't really said it, but I know you guys know. What's happening in this restaurant, we've seen before in different versions, but I think, this set of characters, the way they kind of come together, their oddness, their uniqueness, along with this whole, music thing kind of, separates the film a little bit from maybe some of those other things. So again, I think, this one, I don't know yet, what the plans are, where this will eventually be seen. It is also, I believe Trauma is also involved with this. So, I don't know whether it's going to go through their network. Maybe it'll end up in film festivals. I can definitely see that. And then, maybe down the line, maybe somewhere I can see this definitely on something like Tubi or something. So, hopefully, wherever this ends up, they'll continue to send me the press releases so I can keep you guys informed where this lands, and so that you guys can see it. I definitely think, like I said, a certain audience will definitely want to see this movie. I think it was okay at the end of the day. Like I said, this kind of maybe sent me, maybe not completely edited version, but even in itself, it seemed fine. I didn't see anything, that majorly bothered me about it. A large part of the film is just in the restaurant in itself. So, and most of the blood and guts scenes did seem to be practical effects and so forth. So, nothing to largely complain about in either of those departments either. So, I think overall I'm going to end up giving this 2.5 pools of blood out of 5. You know, maybe I wanted a little bit more blood and that kind of thing. But again, you know, I could see why, they kept it maybe a little bit more with the characters and did kind of have to focus on that. That's just me in itself. But I definitely, think that it has its moments there. Its characters will have its moments that are pretty funny. Again, I don't know about drop out of your chair. It depends, on what you like humor wise. But there's definitely some memorable moments in there, and definitely takes its own kind of way comedy wise. But yeah, I think it definitely will fit. If it ends up finding its way through the film festival circuit, and then I definitely could see this with on Tubi much better than some of the other stuff I've seen and not reviewed on Tubi. So certainly that has a place there. I don't know what they're considering, but I think that there will be a place for this for horror fans to enjoy. So again, that's 2.5 pools of blood out of 5. And with that, horrorreviews.blogspot.com, so you can find all my reviews written and video. Certainly mostly video reviews for a while now, so you can like and subscribe and do everything else that everybody wants to do here on YouTube. If not, no worries, it is okay. I thank you for your time regardless. Twitter, Facebook information down below. Feel free to join me there. Talk about this film when you eventually see it. Feel free to ask me if it's come out yet and so forth. And definitely in the comment section, I will try to make sure I include, whatever latest press release I have for the film, and try to keep you guys updated. But definitely when you see it, feel free to comment down there as well. Or again, just ask if the film is out for you guys to be able to see. So with that, I'll catch you on the next review, horror fans.